The for sale sign swung gently in the Montana breeze as I signed the final documents. 43 years of memories sold in a single pen stroke. "You sure about this, Lillian?" asked Jim Hendricks, my realtor and friend of 3 decades. His weathered face couldn't hide his concern. "This ranch has been in your family since my grandfather built it with his bare hands," I finished, folding the check for $327,000 with trembling fingers. "But Megan needs help with her business venture. Family comes first. Family comes first." The mantra my late husband Richard had repeated throughout our marriage, the philosophy that had guided my every decision since his passing 8 years ago. Outside, Shadow, my aging border collie, waited patiently in my '98 Ford pickup. He'd be coming with me to the small apartment I'd rented near Seattle, 2 hours from Megan, Brian, and my twin grandchildren, instead of the 10-hour drive that had kept us apart for too long. "Those grandkids are lucky to have you," Jim said, handing me a copy of the sale documents. "Moving across states at your age just to be closer." At 68, I wasn't ancient, but I understood his meaning. Leaving behind my support network, my church community, the neighbors who checked on me during winter storms, it wasn't a small sacrifice. But the thought of seeing 7-year-old Emma and Ethan regularly, instead of just on video calls, made it worthwhile. That evening, I sat on the porch swing one last time, Shadow at my feet. The sunset painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold, a farewell performance I committed to memory. "We're doing the right thing," I told Shadow, scratching behind his ears. "Megan and Brian have a vision for that artisan coffee shop. They just needed capital." I'd never understood the appeal of $7 lattes, but Seattle was different from rural Montana. "And we'll be close enough to attend school plays and soccer games." 2 weeks later, after transferring $275,000 to Megan's business account, I handed over my house keys to the new owners, a young couple with 3 children who looked at the sprawling ranch house with the same dreams Richard and I had once shared. My new apartment was small, but sufficient, a 1-bedroom unit in a senior living complex with beige carpeting and walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's television. Shadow adapted better than I did, finding a sunny spot by the window where he could watch the parking lot activity. Monthly dinners with Megan's family kept me going through the adjustment period. The twins seemed to grow inches between visits, though Megan and Brian were often distracted, checking phones and speaking in hurried whispers about supplier issues and customer counts. "The coffee shop is just more demanding than we expected," Megan explained when I asked if everything was all right. "Seattle's market is competitive. Is my investment helping?" I asked carefully. "Of course, Mom," she replied quickly. "We couldn't have done this without you. We're just in the challenging early phase." I nodded, remembering the lean years when Richard and I had struggled to make the ranch profitable. Success rarely came overnight. As November approached, I felt a growing excitement. Thanksgiving had always been my holiday, the one where I shined brightest in the kitchen, preparing Richard's mother's secret recipe stuffing and my own blue-ribbon pumpkin pies. When no invitation came by mid-month, I called Megan. "Oh, we haven't finalized plans yet," she said, distraction evident in her voice. "I'll let you know." 2 days before Thanksgiving, with still no word, I made a decision. I'd surprise them. After all, family shouldn't need formal invitations for holidays. I'd bring my famous pies, small gifts for the twins, and my warmest smile. The drive would be long, 10 hours if traffic cooperated, but the thought of a proper family Thanksgiving after nearly a year of displacement filled me with determination. "It'll be worth it, Shadow," I promised, packing his bed and food into the truck alongside my small overnight bag. "We're finally having a real holiday with family again." Little did I know that the true holiday surprise would be mine to receive, a revelation that would reshape everything I thought I understood about family, loyalty, and the real meaning of gratitude. Highway 90 stretched before me like an endless ribbon, cutting through forests and mountain passes as I drove westward. 10 hours in a truck with temperamental heating wasn't ideal, but anticipation warmed me more effectively than the sputtering vents. "We'll be there by 4, I told Shadow, who dozed on the passenger seat, gray muzzle resting on his paws. Perfect timing to help with last-minute dinner preparations. I'd risen at 3 a.m. to pack the truck and prepare my contributions. 2 pumpkin pies made from scratch, cranberry sauce with orange zest, the way Megan had loved as a child, and my special yeast rolls that required 3 separate risings. Each recipe carried family history, connections to holidays when Richard was alive, and Megan still looked at me with admiration, instead of distracted tolerance. The miles passed with memories as my companions. The Christmas when 6-year-old Megan had received her first pony. Richard teaching her to drive in this very truck, his patience outlasting her teenage frustration. Her wedding day, when she'd looked so beautiful that my heart had nearly burst with pride. The twins' birth, when I'd spent 2 weeks at their Seattle home, cooking and cleaning while Megan recovered. When had things changed? When had I transitioned from essential mother to occasional accessory in her life? At a gas station near Spokane, I called to check in, but the call went to voicemail. "Just wanted to let you know I'm thinking about you," I said, keeping my surprise intact. "Happy Thanksgiving." Back on the road, doubt crept in. Perhaps I should have been more direct, asked explicitly about the holiday plans. But the thought of potential rejection had kept me vague. This way, I could pretend the surprise was my plan all along. Late afternoon traffic slowed my approach to Seattle, adding an extra hour to the journey. My back ached from the truck's worn seat, and even Shadow seemed restless, pacing the small space and whining occasionally. "Almost there, boy," I assured him. Almost home. But was it home? The word caught in my thoughts. My home had been the Montana ranch, with its familiar creaks and smells, the view of mountains from my bedroom window, the rose bushes Richard had planted for our 30th anniversary. The apartment near Seattle was just a way station, a compromise to be near family without imposing on them directly. As I navigated through residential streets, my stomach tightened with nervous anticipation. Megan and Brian's craftsman-style house sat on a tree-lined street in an upscale neighborhood, its carefully maintained exterior a testament to their commitment to appearances. Today, the house glowed with warm light from every window. Cars lined the curb, expensive models with shiny paint and dealer logos I recognized from Brian's business associates. A catering van was parked in the driveway. I found a spot half a block away, checking my appearance in the rearview mirror. The drive had left my silver hair slightly mussed, and fatigue shadowed my eyes, but the excitement of surprising Megan and seeing the twins outweighed my concern about looking travel-worn. "Wait here," I told Shadow, cracking the windows. "I'll come back for you once I've said hello." Balancing the pies and cranberry sauce, I made my way to their front door. Through the decorative glass panels, I could see movement inside. People in cocktail attire holding wine glasses, servers with trays weaving through the crowd. Laughter floated through the evening air, along with the unmistakable aroma of roasting turkey and sage stuffing. My stomach rumbled, reminding me I'd eaten nothing but a granola bar since breakfast. The doorbell chimed cheerfully when I pressed it, and I straightened my shoulders, anticipating the delight on the twins' faces when they saw their grandmother unexpectedly appearing on Thanksgiving. The door swung open to reveal Megan, stunning in a burgundy dress I'd never seen before. Her chestnut hair swept into an elegant updo. Her smile froze when she registered my presence, eyes widening in what looked more like panic than pleasure. "Mom?" she gasped, stepping quickly onto the porch and pulling the door nearly closed behind her. "What are you doing here?" The question, delivered in a harsh whisper, struck like a physical blow. "Surprising you for Thanksgiving," I answered, confusion dampening my excitement. "I brought pies and—" "You should have called," she interrupted, glancing nervously over her shoulder at the gathering inside. "This isn't a good time." Behind her, a burst of laughter rose from the party. A man's voice called out, "Megan? Who is it?" "No one," she called back with false brightness, before turning to me with pleading eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry, but this is actually a business event. We're hosting potential investors for the coffee shop." "On Thanksgiving?" I asked, the pies growing heavy in my arms. "It's a strategic dinner," she explained, her voice tight. "These people could save our business. I can't have distractions." The word landed with devastating clarity. I was a distraction, an inconvenience, an embarrassment to the image they were trying to project. "I see," I said quietly, as something cold and hard formed in the center of my chest. "I drove 10 hours to see my family on Thanksgiving, but I'm a distraction." Megan at least had the grace to look ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mom. We'll do a family Thanksgiving another time." But we both knew what those words really meant. You don't belong here today. You don't fit into the picture we're trying to paint. Lillian's surprise visit has turned into a devastating rejection. As her own daughter pushes her away on Thanksgiving, what will she do now? And why is Megan so desperate to impress these investors that she would turn away her own mother? Subscribe now to discover what happens next in this heart-wrenching family drama. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice barely audible above the party noise spilling from inside. I drove 10 hours. I can't just turn around and drive back tonight. Megan glanced at her diamond watch, a gift from Brian on their 10th anniversary that she'd shown off during our last video call. There's a Holiday Inn about 15 minutes from here. Megan, I said, reality settling heavily on my shoulders. I spent nearly all my money helping you and Brian start the coffee shop. I can't afford a hotel near Seattle. Irritation flashed across her features, quickly masked with the same expression she used when the twins misbehaved in public. Mom, I'm sorry, but you really should have called first. We have a full house of very important people. Through the gap in the door, I glimpsed Brian charming a group of well-dressed guests, gesturing animatedly. The twins were nowhere in sight, probably upstairs with a sitter, kept away from the grown-up event. Could I at least see Emma and Ethan? I asked, hope fading even as I voiced the request. They're already in bed, Megan lied smoothly. I knew it was a lie because I could hear children's laughter from somewhere inside the house. School night. It's Thanksgiving break, I pointed out. Her smile tightened. Mom, please, I need to get back to my guests. A tall man in an expensive suit appeared behind Megan, curiosity evident in his expression. Everything all right, Megan? We're about to start the investment presentation. Megan's spine stiffened. Everything's fine, Lawrence. Just a delivery mix-up. A delivery. That's what I'd been reduced to. Not a mother who had sold her home to help finance their business. Not a grandmother who had driven across 3 states to share a holiday. A delivery mix-up. Of course, the man replied smoothly, his gaze sliding over me with the practiced dismissal reserved for service workers and other irrelevant people. Brian's ready when you are. I'll be right there, Megan assured him with a dazzling smile that vanished the moment he retreated. She turned back to me with barely concealed impatience. Mom, I'm really sorry about the confusion, but I need to go. Take the pies at least, I said, holding them out like an offering, a final attempt to be useful, to matter. She glanced at the homemade desserts, then shook her head. The caterer brought harvest tarts from that French bakery downtown. These might clash with the menu theme. Each word landed like a tiny dagger. My pies, made with the recipe passed down through 3 generations of our family, would clash with their sophisticated event. I see, I said again, because what else could I say? Happy Thanksgiving, Megan. We'll call you tomorrow, she promised, already backing toward the door. Maybe we can meet for coffee next week. The door closed with a definitive click, leaving me standing on the porch with cooling pies and congealing cranberry sauce, the weight of rejection far heavier than the food in my arms. For a moment, I simply stood there, unable to process what had just happened. Through the decorative glass, I watched Megan rejoin her party, touching Lawrence's arm with practiced charm, throwing her head back in laughter at something Brian said. No one looked toward the door. No one wondered about the older woman left standing in the November chill. I had been dismissed, erased from the evening as effectively as an unwanted brushstroke painted over on canvas. The walk back to my truck felt endless. Shadow greeted me with a concerned whine, his warm tongue licking my hand as I placed the rejected food on the passenger seat. Change of plans, I told him, my voice breaking on the last word. We're not staying after all. Tears blurred the streetlights as I drove aimlessly away from Megan's house, with no destination in mind beyond away. The bright homes I passed held families gathering around tables, sharing meals and memories, engaged in the simple act of being together on a day dedicated to gratitude. What was I grateful for? The question echoed as I drove, finding no immediate answer. Not my daughter, who had dismissed me like an inconvenient delivery. Not my home, which I had sold to help ungrateful children. Not my future, which stretched before me empty of purpose. When the tears made driving dangerous, I pulled into a supermarket parking lot, choosing a far corner away from the few cars belonging to employees working the holiday. The store was closed, its darkened windows reflecting my truck's headlights before I switched them off. The silence felt absolute. Even Shadow seemed to understand the gravity of the moment, pressing his warm body against my side as I finally allowed myself to weep, for the ranch I'd loved, for the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way, for the holiday traditions that had died with Richard and would never be resurrected. What do we do now? I whispered to no one in particular, as darkness settled around us. The answer came in the form of Shadow's gentle nudge and the rumbling of my empty stomach. We would survive this night, as we had survived other hardships. We would find our way forward, even if that way was currently shrouded in shadow. I reclined my seat as far as it would go, and pulled an old blanket from behind the bench. It wasn't much protection against the November chill, but it would have to do. "Good night, boy," I murmured to Shadow, who settled into his customary spot against my side. "Tomorrow will be better." But as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I wondered if I still believed my own reassurances, or if they had become merely habit, empty words spoken against the growing certainty that I had sacrificed everything for people who valued me not at all. Cold seeped through the truck's metal frame, despite the blanket wrapped tightly around my shoulders. November in Seattle brought a damp chill that penetrated deeper than Montana's dry cold, settling into bones and spirit with equal persistence. Shadow's warm body pressed against mine provided some comfort, his steady breathing a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in this parking lot exile. Every passing headlight caused my heart to jump, a reflexive hope that somehow Megan had come looking for me, had realized the cruelty of her dismissal. But each car passed without slowing, and eventually, the parking lot fell into complete darkness, save for the distant security lights casting long shadows across the asphalt. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by discomfort and intrusive thoughts. How had my relationship with Megan deteriorated to this point? When had I transformed from beloved mother to embarrassing inconvenience? Richard would have known what to do. He'd always been the one who could reach Megan during her difficult teenage years, finding the right balance of firmness and understanding. I had been the soft touch, the one who baked cookies after school and tended scraped knees with kisses and bandages. "We raised her better than this," I whispered to Richard's memory, rubbing circulation back into my stiffening fingers. Where did we go wrong? My phone screen illuminated the truck cab as I checked the time. 1:23 a.m. A notification showed a missed call from my neighbor in Montana, Martha Jennings, but no messages from Megan. Not that I expected any. She was likely still entertaining her important guests, pouring expensive wine and pretending that nothing uncomfortable had happened earlier. I scrolled through photos to distract myself from the cold and hunger. Pictures of the ranch in different seasons. Shadow as a puppy bounding through mountain meadows. Richard teaching Megan to ride her first pony. Family Thanksgiving gatherings from happier times when the holiday still meant connection rather than rejection. A text notification broke my reverie. Martha again. "Lillian, please call when you get this. Important news about Clayton." Clayton Bennett, my reclusive neighbor whose property had adjoined the ranch for decades. A cantankerous old bachelor who kept mostly to himself, though I'd made a point of checking on him regularly after Richard passed, bringing soup during his frequent bouts of bronchitis, and picking up his medications when winter roads made driving treacherous for someone his age. My concern for Clayton momentarily overshadowed my own troubles. I dialed Martha's number despite the late hour, knowing she wouldn't have texted twice if it wasn't important. "Lillian, thank God," she answered immediately. "I've been trying to reach you all day." "I've been driving," I explained, not wanting to elaborate on my current circumstances. "Is Clayton all right?" The pause told me everything before she spoke. "No, honey. He passed 3 days ago. Peaceful, in his sleep." A wave of sadness washed over me. Clayton had been a fixture in my Montana life. Not exactly a friend, but a presence as familiar as the mountains themselves. His absence was yet another thread severed from the tapestry of my former life. "The funeral's tomorrow," Martha continued, "but that's not why I've been trying to reach you. His lawyer's been calling everyone trying to find you. Says it's urgent you contact him." "His lawyer?" I repeated, confusion momentarily displacing grief. Why would Clayton's lawyer need to speak with me? "Wouldn't say, just that it's important. I have his number if you want to write it down." I fumbled in my purse for a pen, jotting the lawyer's information on an old receipt. Though why Clayton's legal affairs would have anything to do with me remained a mystery. We'd been neighborly, nothing more. "Thanks for letting me know," I told Martha. "I'll call the lawyer in the morning." After hanging up, I sat in the darkened truck, adding Clayton's death to the accumulating losses of the past year. The ranch, my sense of purpose, my place in my daughter's life, and now a neighbor who, despite his gruff exterior, had been one of the few remaining connections to my life in Montana. Shadow stirred beside me, whimpering softly in his sleep, chasing dream rabbits, or perhaps sensing my distress. I stroked his graying fur, finding comfort in the simple, uncomplicated love of a dog who had never once found me inconvenient or embarrassing. "Just you and me now, old boy," I whispered. Outside, a late-night rain began to patter against the windshield, transforming the parking lot into a glistening black mirror that reflected the empty sky. No stars visible tonight, just darkness and the occasional distant rumble of traffic on the highway. I rearranged the blanket, trying to find a position that would allow some sleep despite the cold seeping into my joints. Tomorrow would bring practical concerns, finding an affordable place to wash up, stretching my dwindling funds until I could figure out next steps, calling Clayton's mysterious lawyer. But tonight, in this liminal space between one life and whatever came next, I allowed myself to fully feel the magnitude of what had happened. My own daughter had turned me away on Thanksgiving, had chosen appearances over compassion, status over family. The realization brought fresh tears, silent ones that tracked down my cheeks as the rain tracked down the windshield, parallel paths of water marking passages of loss. Eventually, exhaustion overcame discomfort, and I drifted into uneasy sleep to the rhythm of falling rain and Shadow's gentle snoring. My last conscious thought was a question that had no immediate answer. Where do you go when the home you sacrificed everything for exists only in memory, and the family you gave everything to has no place for you at their table? As Lillian spends a cold, lonely night in her truck, mysterious news arrives about her former neighbor. What could Clayton's lawyer possibly want with her? And how will she face the morning after such a devastating rejection by her own daughter? Subscribe now to discover what unexpected developments await in this emotional journey. Morning arrived with stiff joints and frost patterns on the truck windows. I'd slept perhaps 3 hours total, waking repeatedly to adjust my position on the unyielding seat or pull the inadequate blanket tighter around my shoulders. Shadow's warm body had been my only real comfort through the long night. The supermarket was now open, its parking lot slowly filling with early shoppers hunting Black Friday deals. I sat up, wiping condensation from the inside of the windshield, suddenly conscious of how I must appear. An old woman sleeping in a truck, unwashed and disheveled. "Time to move, Shadow," I murmured, starting the engine to run the defroster. Before someone calls security on us, my reflection in the rearview mirror confirmed my fears. Hair flattened on one side, dark circles under reddened eyes, an overall appearance of someone whose life had come undone, which I supposed was accurate enough. The gas gauge hovered just above a quarter tank, enough to get us somewhere, though I wasn't sure where. The thought of driving 10 hours back to my empty apartment held little appeal, yet staying near Seattle seemed equally pointless. Megan had made her feelings abundantly clear. My stomach growled, reminding me that I'd had no dinner. The pies and cranberry sauce sat on the passenger seat floor where I'd placed them last night, a pathetic reminder of my rejected offerings. At least Shadow's food and water bowls were in the truck bed toolbox. A small mercy. The supermarket restroom provided a makeshift washing facility. I splashed cold water on my face, ran wet fingers through my silver hair, and brushed my teeth with supplies from my purse. The woman at the sink next to me studiously avoided eye contact, the way people do when confronted with others' obvious misfortune. Back in the truck, I poured kibble for Shadow in the parking lot, then unwrapped one of the granola bars I kept in the glove compartment for emergencies. It was stale but edible, washed down with water from a half-empty bottle. Clayton's lawyer. The memory of Martha's call surfaced as I finished my meager breakfast. Checking the time, 7:43 a.m., I decided it was probably too early to call a law office, even if I had no idea what else to do with my day. My phone rang before I could put it away, an unknown Montana number lighting up the screen. "Mrs. Winters?" a male voice inquired when I answered. "This is James Harrington from Wallace, Harrington and Schmidt. I'm the executor of Clayton Bennett's estate." The lawyer had saved me the trouble of calling him. "Yes, I heard about Clayton last night. I'm so sorry for his passing." "Thank you. Mr. Bennett spoke highly of you." A pause. "Mrs. Winters, are you currently in Montana? I've been trying to reach you regarding some time-sensitive matters related to Mr. Bennett's will." "No, I'm in Washington State visiting family." The half-truth came automatically, pride preventing me from admitting I was essentially homeless in a supermarket parking lot after being rejected by said family. "I see. Well, this is somewhat irregular, but given the circumstances, I can discuss the relevant details by phone." Mr. Bennett was quite specific about timing. My curiosity deepened. "I don't understand what this has to do with me. Clayton and I were just neighbors." "That's not entirely accurate from a legal perspective," Mr. Harrington replied. "Mrs. Winters, Mr. Bennett named you as the sole beneficiary of his entire estate. The words seemed to hover in the air of the truck cab, refusing to fully register in my brain. That can't be right. We weren't even particularly close. On the contrary, Mr. Bennett's instructions were quite clear. He amended his will 6 months ago, specifically naming you, Lillian Margaret Winters, as his sole heir. The estate includes his ranch property, investment portfolio, and liquid assets totaling approximately $1.5 million. My hands began to shake so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. $1.5 million? Yes, ma'am. In fact, the transfer to your account was initiated yesterday, as per Mr. Bennett's instructions. You should have received notification from your bank. I hadn't checked my bank account in days, having grown accustomed to the depressing sight of my dwindling savings. But why? Why would he leave everything to me? Mr. Bennett left a letter that might answer your questions. I can email it to you immediately, but the essential message was that you were the only person who showed him genuine kindness without expectation of return. His words, not mine. Memories flooded back, delivering soup during snowstorms, bringing Christmas cookies, though he always grumbled about holiday nonsense, sitting with him on his porch while he reminisced about his younger days. Small kindnesses that had cost me nothing but time. This is overwhelming, I managed, my voice unsteady. I understand. The letter explains more, and of course, there will be paperwork to complete, but I wanted to confirm that the funds transfer should be complete. You might want to check with your bank. With trembling fingers, I opened my banking app while still on the call. The balance that appeared on the screen made me gasp audibly, $1,127,342.86, an impossible number where less than $3,000 had been yesterday. It's there, I whispered. It's actually there. Yes, Mrs. Winters. As I said, Mr. Bennett was quite specific about his wishes. The lawyer's voice softened slightly. If I may say so, he spoke of you with great respect, said you embodied values rarely seen anymore. After ending the call with promises to review the emailed documents, I sat in stunned silence, staring at the bank balance that had transformed my reality in an instant. Yesterday, I had been a woman who couldn't afford a hotel room, sleeping in my truck after being turned away by my own daughter. Today, I was a millionaire with property and possibilities I couldn't yet fully comprehend. Shadow nudged my hand, his canine instincts sensing the emotional earthquake reshaping my internal landscape. I stroked his head automatically, trying to ground myself in the familiar texture of his fur, while my mind raced with implications and possibilities. Everything's changed, boy, I told him softly. Everything's changed. The coffee shop where I retreated to read Clayton's letter bore no resemblance to Megan and Brian's artisan establishment. This was a simple diner-style place with laminated menus and bottomless coffee served in thick white mugs, the kind of unpretentious comfort Clayton himself would have appreciated. With Shadow settled in the truck, window cracked, fresh water provided, I claimed a corner booth away from other patrons and opened the email from Mr. Harrington. Clayton's letter had been scanned and attached, 3 pages of surprisingly neat handwriting on lined paper. Dear Lillian, if you're reading this, I've finally kicked the bucket. Don't waste time feeling sad about it. At 83, I've had a decent run, even if I spent most of it being what folks around here politely call a character. I'm not one for flowery speeches, so I'll get right to it. I'm leaving you everything I own. The ranch, the investments my brother forced me to make before he passed, and whatever cash is sitting in my accounts. James Harrington tells me it adds up to a tidy sum, though money never meant much to me beyond keeping the ranch going. You're probably wondering why. Fair question. Here's your answer. In 40 years as neighbors, you're the only person who ever showed me kindness without wanting something in return. A lump formed in my throat as I paused to sip my coffee. Clayton had always maintained a gruff exterior, rebuffing most attempts at friendship with suspicious scowls and monosyllabic responses. Yet beneath that prickly surface had apparently been careful observation and deep appreciation. Remember that blizzard in '09 when the power was out for 9 days? You and Richard checked on me twice daily, brought hot food, made sure my generator was fueled. When Richard passed, and half the county showed up with casseroles for you, then disappeared once the funeral was over, I noticed how you still found time to bring me soup when my bronchitis acted up. Small things, maybe. But they showed your character. This world's full of people who are kind when it's convenient or when others are watching. You're kind when it's difficult and when no one would notice if you weren't. I've watched how your daughter treats you. Visits getting shorter and less frequent. Phone calls where she's clearly doing something else while talking to you. That business about the fancy coffee shop where your money was welcome, but your opinions weren't. My hands trembled slightly. I hadn't realized Clayton had been paying such close attention to my life, my relationships. Had my dynamic with Megan been so obviously deteriorating that even my reclusive neighbor had noticed? Don't look surprised. Small towns run on observation and gossip, and I've had plenty of time for both. The point is, you deserve better than being treated like an ATM with inconvenient emotions attached. You deserve to live your remaining years with dignity and purpose, not watching your savings dwindle while waiting for crumbs of attention from people who don't appreciate you. So here's what I propose from beyond the grave. Take my money and property and use them to build the life you actually want, not the one your daughter thinks you should quietly fade away in. The east pasture gets good morning light would make a fine spot for those therapeutic riding lessons you always talked about starting for special needs kids. The old bunkhouse could be converted to a nice office or classroom space. Just ideas. Whatever you decide, it's yours, free and clear. The therapeutic riding program. A dream I'd mentioned perhaps twice in passing conversations with Clayton, during those rare moments when he'd asked about my interests, rather than just tolerating my presence on his porch. I'd never imagined he was actually listening, much less remembering. One condition to all this: you can't give or loan any of it to that coffee shop venture. Not because I'm trying to control you from the grave, but because you've already given enough to people who don't appreciate the sacrifice. Time to look after Lillian for a change. If you're wondering why I never said any of this while I was alive, well, some things are easier to say when you don't have to watch someone get emotional about them. Never was comfortable with feelings, mine or anyone else's. Take care of that old dog of yours. He's a good judge of character. Always wagged his tail for me, even when I was being an ornery cuss. Clayton Bennett P.S. I paid for my funeral in advance. Simple pine box, no church service. Already squared away with Miller's funeral home. Don't let them upsell you on anything fancy. I just haunt you for wasting money. Tears blurred my vision as I refolded the printout. Clayton's gruff voice seemed to echo from the pages, his personality preserved in the straightforward sentences and practical instructions. He'd seen me, truly seen me, when I'd thought myself invisible to everyone except as a convenient source of financial support. The waitress refilled my coffee with a sympathetic smile, mistaking my tears for simple grief rather than the complex emotional storm actually raging within me. Gratitude, validation, and yes, a creeping sense of righteous anger that had been building since Megan closed her door in my face. Clayton was right. I had allowed myself to be used, had sold my beloved ranch to finance my daughter's business, while she simultaneously pushed me further from her life. I had accepted the dwindling phone calls, the distracted conversations, the clear message that I was an obligation rather than a valued parent. No more. With sudden clarity, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The ranch, Clayton's ranch, now my ranch, was calling me home. Not to pick up where I'd left off, but to build something new from the solid foundation of the past. I paid my bill, leaving a generous tip that reflected my changed circumstances, and returned to the truck where Shadow greeted me with his customary enthusiasm. "We're going home, boy," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "But first, I have one stop to make." Megan's street looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more like the ordinary suburban neighborhood it was beneath its veneer of exclusivity. The catering van and luxury cars had departed, leaving only the family vehicles in the driveway. A forgotten wine glass sat on the porch railing, evidence of last night's sophisticated gathering. I parked directly in front, no longer concerned about being an embarrassing presence. Shadow perked up, recognizing the house where the twins lived, his tail thumping against the seat in anticipation of seeing the children who usually slipped him treats when Megan wasn't looking. "Not today, boy," I told him gently. "You're staying here. This won't take long." The doorbell chimed just as it had yesterday, but this time I stood differently. Spine straight, shoulders back, the weight of Clayton's validation and my own renewed self-worth supporting me like invisible armor. Brian answered, his expression cycling rapidly from surprise to discomfort to artificial welcome. His designer sweater couldn't hide the shadows under his eyes, evidence of last night's late entertaining. "Lillian, we were just about to call you," he lied, stepping back with reluctant courtesy. Come in, Coffee? The house smelled of lingering turkey and cleaning products. The dining room already returned to its showcase perfection. No evidence remained of the strategic dinner, except a collection of wine bottles waiting for recycling. No coffee, thank you, I replied, remaining standing even as Brian gestured toward the living room seating. I won't be staying long. Is Megan home? She's just getting the kids ready for... He stopped as Megan appeared from upstairs, freezing mid-step when she saw me. Mom, she managed, her voice catching. She was dressed in expensive athleisure wear, hair pulled into a casual ponytail that still somehow looked styled. We were going to call you today. About last night. I'm not here for explanations or apologies, I interrupted, my voice calmer than I felt inside. I'm here to say goodbye. Confusion replaced the defensive guilt on her face. Goodbye? What do you mean? I'm returning to Montana today. Permanently. Brian stepped closer to Megan, their united front automatic even in confusion. But your apartment, the lease, I'll handle it remotely, I said. Some things have changed since yesterday. Megan's eyes narrowed with the perceptive calculation that had served her well in business, if not in personal relationships. What things? My neighbor Clayton Bennett passed away. He left me his ranch and considerable assets. I delivered this information without embellishment, watching their reactions carefully. The shift was immediate and transparent, surprise giving way to rapid recalculation. Brian recovered first, his salesman's smile emerging with practiced ease. That's wonderful news, Lillian. What an unexpected blessing, isn't it? I agreed pleasantly. Apparently kindness yields returns that strategic networking doesn't. The barb landed precisely as intended. Megan flinched visibly before recovering. Mom, about last night. The timing was just awful, and those investors were so important. Investors who couldn't help after all, from what I gather. I glanced meaningfully at the tension evident in both their postures. Brian's smile faltered. What do you mean? Small towns run on observation and gossip, I quoted from Clayton's letter. Word travels about struggling businesses seeking rescue funding, even across state lines. Megan's composure cracked first. The coffee shop is having some cash flow issues. Nothing serious, just startup challenges. If we could just access more of my money? I finished for her. That's not going to happen. Mom, please. Megan stepped forward, her voice taking on the cajoling tone she'd used as a teenager when asking for expensive jeans or extended curfews. We're family. Of course, last night was handled badly, but you can't hold that against us when our business is at stake. Family, I repeated, the words sitting heavily between us. Was I family when I was sleeping in my truck last night because you couldn't find space for me at your Thanksgiving table? Shock registered on both their faces. Brian recovered first. You slept in your truck? Lillian, you should have said something. We could have... What? Found room for me after your important guests left? Made space for the embarrassing mother who didn't fit your sophisticated image? The anger I'd suppressed for so long finally found voice, though I kept my tone level. I sold my home, our family ranch, to help finance your business venture. I gave you everything I had, and you couldn't even let me use your guest bathroom. Megan's eyes filled with tears that I might once have responded to with immediate forgiveness. Mom, I'm sorry, we were desperate. The business is failing. Brian made some investments that didn't... Stop. I held up my hand. I'm not interested in the details. Whatever financial hole you've dug yourselves into, you'll need to climb out without my help. But you just said you inherited money, Brian protested, the calculation so transparent it was almost pitiful. Surely as family, Clayton left one condition with his bequest, I cut in, that none of it goes to your coffee shop. He observed how you treated me even from a distance, and he made his judgment accordingly. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of small feet on the stairs. Emma and Ethan appeared, faces lighting up when they saw me. Grandma! They chorused, rushing toward me with genuine delight that pierced straight through my armor of righteous anger. I knelt to embrace them, breathing in the sweet childhood scent of shampoo and maple syrup. Hello, my loves. We didn't know you were coming for Thanksgiving, Emma said, her small face serious. Mom said you were too busy. The simple statement hung in the air like an indictment. I met Megan's eyes over the children's heads, seeing the flush of shame that confirmed Emma's innocent revelation of yet another lie. I'm afraid I can't stay today, I told the twins, smoothing Ethan's cowlick with practiced affection. I'm heading back to Montana, but I'd like very much if you could come visit me there soon. I have a ranch now, with horses and lots of space to play." "Real horses?" Ethan's eyes widened with excitement. "Real horses," I confirmed. "And a very special dog who's waiting in my truck, missing you terribly." Their excitement was palpable as they begged to see Shadow. With a pointed look at Megan that dared her to object, I led the twins outside for a brief, joyful reunion with my faithful companion. When the children reluctantly returned inside at their mother's insistence, I stood by my truck, suddenly exhausted by the emotional confrontation, yet lighter somehow, unburdened by pretense. "The twins are welcome anytime," I told Megan, who hovered uncertainly on the porch. "That door remains open, regardless of everything else." She nodded, tears now flowing freely. "Mom, I really am sorry." "I know," I said, and meant it. "But sometimes sorry isn't enough to undo the harm that's been done. Sometimes it's just the beginning of learning to do better." As I drove away, the rearview mirror framed a tableau of my daughter, standing small and uncertain on her perfect porch, watching as I left her to face the consequences of her choices without the safety net I'd always provided. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But beneath the pain lay something stronger, the certainty that I was finally steering my own course after years of navigating around others' expectations and needs. Montana was calling me home. The Welcome to Montana sign appeared as the afternoon sun began its descent toward distant mountains. I'd been driving for nearly 8 hours, stopping only for necessities and to let Shadow stretch his legs at rest areas along the interstate. The journey that had felt so heavy with anticipation 2 days earlier now carried a different energy. Not excitement exactly, but purpose. A sense of returning to a place where I belonged on my own terms. My phone had chimed several times throughout the day with texts and calls from Megan, each increasingly desperate in tone. I'd let them go to voicemail, not yet ready for another conversation laden with apologies that felt more connected to my newfound wealth than genuine remorse. There would be time for reconciliation later, if the seeds were there to nurture. For now, I needed to focus on rebuilding my own foundation. When I turned onto the familiar county road that led toward what had been my home for most of my adult life, emotions swelled unexpectedly. The landscape hadn't changed in the months of my absence. The same rolling hills, the same fence lines marking property boundaries, the same massive cottonwoods along creek beds. But I was seeing it with new eyes, appreciating the beauty I had taken for granted during decades of familiarity. "Almost there, Shadow," I told my faithful companion, who had perked up at the familiar scenery, his nose pressed eagerly against the passenger window. "Almost home." The sun was setting as I turned onto the gravel drive leading to Clayton's ranch. My ranch now, a concept still too new to feel real. The sprawling single-story house came into view, its weathered cedar siding glowing amber in the late light. Smaller than my former home, but solid and well-maintained despite Clayton's age and solitary status. Martha Jennings's pickup was parked in the circular drive, her sturdy figure emerging from the front door as I pulled up beside her. I hadn't called ahead, but news travels fast in small communities, and Martha had clearly anticipated my return. "About time you showed up," she called as I stepped from the truck, her gruff greeting belied by the warmth in her embrace. "Place has been too quiet without you next door." "I wasn't next door anymore," I reminded her, returning the hug with equal fervor. "I sold the ranch, remember? And now you own this one. God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?" Martha stepped back, studying me with the frank assessment of a lifelong friend. "You look like you've been through the ringer, Lil. That daughter of yours give you trouble?" The simple question, asked without pretense or judgment, broke something loose inside me. Standing in Clayton's, my driveway, with the Montana sunset, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson, I found myself telling Martha everything. The rejection at Megan's door, the night spent shivering in my truck, the shocking inheritance and confrontation that followed. Martha listened without interruption, her weathered face registering appropriate outrage and satisfaction at the story's turns. When I finished, she simply nodded and said, "Clayton always did have better judgment than folks gave him credit for. Come on inside, I've got stew keeping warm and the place is all ready for you." The interior of Clayton's house surprised me. Though I'd visited countless times, I'd rarely ventured beyond the kitchen and front room where we'd shared occasional meals or coffee. Now, seeing the entire house as its owner, I discovered unexpected touches of refinement. Well-crafted furniture beneath the clutter, bookshelves filled with history volumes and classic literature, even a baby grand piano in a back room I'd never entered. "Didn't know the old coot played, did you?" Martha remarked, noting my surprise. His mother was a concert pianist in her youth. Clayton could play Chopin pieces that would bring tears to your eyes, though he'd only do it when he thought nobody was listening. Another layer of the man I'd thought I knew, revealed only in his absence. How many other aspects of Clayton had remained hidden behind his gruff exterior? What else might I discover as I settled into this unexpected inheritance? Martha had indeed prepared the house for my arrival. Fresh linens on the beds, pantry stocked with essentials, even a new dog bed for Shadow placed near the River Rock fireplace, where a welcoming blaze now crackled. The gesture brought fresh tears to my eyes, gratitude for simple kindness that stood in stark contrast to my own daughter's rejection. "Don't get weepy on me," Martha warned, ladling beef stew into bowls at the kitchen table. "Just being neighborly. Besides, someone had to air the place out. Clayton wasn't much for housekeeping these last few years." We ate in companionable conversation, Martha updating me on local happenings I'd missed during my months away. The Petersons' new grandchild, Reverend Miller's retirement, the controversy over the proposed gravel pit operation near the county line. The familiar rhythms of small-town life wrapped around me like a favorite quilt, comfortable and grounding after the emotional turbulence of the past 48 hours. "Harrington dropped this by yesterday," Martha said as we finished eating, sliding a thick envelope across the table. "Said you'd need it when you arrived." Inside were keys to the house, outbuildings, and Clayton's truck, along with documents requiring my signature to complete the property transfer. A handwritten note from the lawyer explained that he'd handle the paperwork remotely to spare me an immediate trip to town after my long drive. "He thought of everything," I murmured, running my fingers over the ring of keys, physical symbols of the new life that had been unexpectedly gifted to me. "Clayton was thorough," Martha agreed. "Planned this down to the last detail from what I gather. Even had me stock your favorite coffee and those ridiculous bran muffins you pretend are healthy." The observation startled a laugh from me, the first genuine one in what felt like forever. "They are healthy. High fiber is important at our age. Sawdust would be more appetizing and just as fibrous," Martha retorted, rising to clear our dishes. "Now, I'm heading home before it gets any darker. These old eyes don't drive as well at night as they used to. You gonna be all right here by yourself?" I glanced around the kitchen, unfamiliar yet somehow already feeling like a space where I belonged. "I think I will be. It's strange, but not in a bad way." After Martha departed with promises to check in tomorrow, I wandered through the house with Shadow at my heels, both of us exploring our new territory. Clayton's bedroom was Spartanly neat, no personal items visible beyond a single photograph of a much younger Clayton with an older couple I assumed were his parents. I chose a guest room instead for my first night, not yet ready to claim his most private space as my own. In what must have been his office, I discovered a desk with meticulous records of the ranch operations, cattle sales, pasture rotations, equipment maintenance schedules. Clayton might have been a recluse, but he'd been an organized and thoughtful steward of his land. The east pasture he'd mentioned in his letter was clearly marked on a property map pinned to the wall, along with notations about soil quality and water access, practical information that would prove invaluable if I pursued the therapeutic writing program he'd suggested. The idea took stronger root as I stood there, fingers tracing the boundaries of what was now my land. Not just a vague someday dream, but a genuine possibility. A purpose that could bring meaning to this unexpected chapter of my life. Children finding confidence and healing through connection with horses. A community built around shared growth rather than social status or business networking. The vision felt right in a way that my temporary Seattle life never had. Later, sitting by the fire with Shadow contentedly snoring on his new bed, I finally checked my phone. 6 missed calls from Megan, 2 from Brian, a text from my landlord in Seattle confirming he'd received my message about breaking the lease, and most surprisingly, a text from Ethan that must have been sent with Megan's help. "Grandma, we want to see the horses." Mom said, "Maybe Christmas? Love you, Christmas." 6 weeks away. Time enough to settle in, to begin planning the next phase of my life, to process the emotional whiplash of the past 2 days. Time enough, perhaps, to determine what kind of relationship I wanted with my daughter moving forward, not based on habit or obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine connection. I texted back a simple response, The horses and I will be waiting. Love you both. To Megan's messages, I sent only, safe in Montana. Need time. We'll call when I'm ready. Then I silenced the phone and turned my attention to the flames dancing in the fireplace, their warmth reaching into corners of my heart that had been cold for too long. Tomorrow would bring practical matters, paperwork, assessments of the property, decisions about Clayton's belongings. But tonight was for acknowledging the extraordinary turn my life had taken in the span of 48 hours. From rejected mother sleeping in her truck to ranch owner with purpose and possibility stretching before her. From financial dependence to unexpected security. From defining myself primarily through my relationship with a daughter who took me for granted to rediscovering who Lillian Winters might be when standing firmly on her own 2 feet. What do you think, Shadow? I asked my faithful companion. Are we up for this new adventure? He raised his head, brown eyes reflecting the firelight with canine wisdom that needed no words. We had weathered the hardest parts of this journey together. We would embrace the blessings that had found us against all odds. Tomorrow, we would begin again. The first snow of December dusted the ranch with delicate crystalline powder, transforming familiar landscape into something magical. 3 weeks had passed since my return to Montana. Weeks filled with paperwork, decisions, and gradual adjustment to my new circumstances. Clayton's ranch was becoming mine in subtle ways. I'd rearranged furniture to better suit my preferences, hung a few cherished paintings I'd retrieved from storage, and established daily routines that anchored me in this unexpected new reality. The walk from house to barn each morning, coffee by the east-facing windows as sunrise painted the distant mountains, evening reading by the fireplace with Shadow contentedly sprawled at my feet. Today marked an important milestone. Standing at the paddock fence, I watched as Travis McKenzie, the experienced horse trainer I'd hired, worked gently with 2 new additions to the ranch. Therapy horses specifically selected for the program I was determined to launch by spring. "Buttercup's a natural," Travis called, indicating the dappled gray mare following his cues with calm attention. "Perfect temperament for beginners. Patience of a saint." "And Huckleberry?" I asked, eyeing the chestnut gelding who seemed more interested in investigating the fence line than paying attention to Travis's guidance. "He's curious, not disobedient," Travis replied, with the quiet confidence of someone who understood horses better than most people. "That's good for the more advanced riders. He'll keep them engaged, make them work for his cooperation." I nodded, trusting his assessment. At 28, Travis had already established a solid reputation with special needs riding programs across 3 counties. When I'd approached him about heading up my fledgling operation, he'd accepted with genuine enthusiasm, rather than the wary skepticism I'd encountered from others who questioned whether a woman my age should be launching a new business venture. "The contractor says the bunkhouse conversion should be finished by February," I told him as he led both horses back to the barn. "Plenty of time to set up the classroom space and office before our Target opening." "The families I've spoken with are excited," Travis said, removing Buttercup's halter with practiced ease. 3 have already submitted applications, and Dr. Wilson at the Children's Rehabilitation Center says she has at least 6 more patients who would benefit from the program. Pride warmed me despite the December chill. This was happening, not just a dream or distraction from grief, but a tangible service taking shape under my direction. The therapeutic riding program Clayton had mentioned so casually in his letter was becoming reality. Driven by a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Back at the house, I found an email from Mr. Harrington confirming that the nonprofit paperwork for Bennett Horizons Therapeutic Riding had been approved. The name honored Clayton while looking forward rather than back, a balance that felt right as I navigated the strange territory between respecting his legacy and creating something that was genuinely mine. My phone chimed with a text from Megan, part of the careful communication we'd established in recent weeks. Bought plane tickets for Desi 2327. Kids beyond excited about horses. Booked hotel in town unless other options available. Okay? The measured tone reflected our new reality. After several difficult conversations following my abrupt departure from Seattle, we'd reached an understanding of sorts. I had been clear about my boundaries. No financial assistance for the failed coffee shop. No pretending that Thanksgiving night hadn't happened. No returning to the previous dynamic where my needs were consistently subordinated to hers. Megan had initially responded with hurt and defensiveness, but reality had gradually penetrated. The coffee shop had closed permanently. She and Brian had downsized to a smaller house to manage their debts. Their marriage was strained by financial stress and recriminations. My inheritance remained firmly off limits as a bailout option. Christmas visit confirmed. Guest rooms here ready for all of you. No hotel necessary unless you prefer the privacy. My response was deliberate, offering hospitality without pushing, making space for them while maintaining appropriate boundaries. The ranch house had 4 bedrooms, plenty of room for everyone without the forced intimacy that might strain our fragile reconciliation. Her reply came quickly. Kids want to stay with you. Brian and I will discuss and confirm. Thank you. Progress, however halting. I set the phone aside and returned to the task that had occupied much of my morning, sorting through Clayton's personal belongings. Though I'd been living in his house for weeks, I'd left his bedroom and office largely untouched, respecting the privacy he'd so valued in life. Today felt right for beginning the process of transition, not erasing Clayton's presence, but making room for my own, alongside the legacy he'd entrusted to me. His closet contained exactly what one might expect from a practical rancher. Well-worn work clothes, a few dress shirts still in dry cleaner plastic, sturdy boots lined up with military precision. I set these aside for donation, keeping only a worn leather jacket that somehow captured Clayton's essence, weathered but substantial, practical yet dignified. The bedside table held more personal items, reading glasses, a dog-eared Louis L'Amour novel, a small wooden box containing cufflinks, and his father's pocket watch. In the drawer, I discovered a leather journal filled with surprisingly elegant handwriting, daily notations about ranch operations interspersed with occasional philosophical musings about solitude, purpose, and the changing seasons of life. October 17th, just weeks before his death, Clayton had written, "Lawyer came today. Will is updated. Lillian will likely be shocked, maybe even angry at first, that I've put this responsibility on her. But she'll understand eventually. Some people are builders by nature. She needs something to build again, not just a life on the margins of her daughter's world. The ranch will give her that. Besides, who better to continue what 3 generations of Bennetts created here? She's more aligned with this land's purpose than any blood relation I could have found. Family isn't always about shared names or DNA. Sometimes it's about shared values." Tears blurred my vision as I carefully closed the journal, overwhelmed by the insight of this supposedly gruff, emotionally distant neighbor. Clayton had seen me more clearly than my own daughter, had recognized a need for purpose I'd barely acknowledged to myself. I placed the journal in the cedar chest at the foot of his bed, alongside other personal items I couldn't bring myself to discard. Photographs, letters, mementos of a life lived largely in solitude, but not, I was discovering, without deep thought and careful observation. The office yielded more practical treasures, detailed maps of the property showing water sources and fence lines, meticulous financial records, contact information for local suppliers and service providers who had worked with the ranch for decades. Clayton's organizational systems were intuitive and thorough, making the transition to my management far smoother than I'd anticipated. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I discovered a folder labeled simply, "Ideas." Inside were magazine clippings and printed articles about therapeutic riding programs across the country, some dating back nearly a decade. Detailed notes in Clayton's handwriting analyzed different operational models, facility requirements, and potential community partnerships. The revelation struck me with physical force. This wasn't just a passing suggestion in his letter. Clayton had been researching therapeutic riding programs for years, quietly collecting information about something he knew would interest me based on occasional comments I'd made during our neighborly interactions. Had he been planning this bequest long before formalizing it? Had he seen potential in me that I'd stopped seeing in myself after decades of focusing primarily on others' needs and ambitions? A knock at the front door interrupted my reflections. Martha stood on the porch with a foil-covered dish and knowing smile. "Figured you'd be busy with those new horses Travis brought in. Casserole seemed easier than you having to think about dinner." I welcomed her inside, grateful not just for the food, but for the comfortable companionship she provided. Martha had become a daily presence at the ranch, offering practical assistance and no-nonsense encouragement as I navigated my new circumstances. "You've been busy," she observed, noting the boxes of Clayton's clothes labeled for donation. "Finally tackling his things?" "It felt like time," I replied, setting her casserole in the kitchen. "I keep finding surprises. Did you know he'd been researching therapeutic riding programs for years?" Martha's expression suggested this wasn't news to her. Clayton noticed things, remembered what mattered to people. Never talked much about it, but he paid attention. He planned all this so carefully, I said, gesturing around us to indicate not just the house, but the entire situation, almost like he was matchmaking me with his ranch. That's exactly what he was doing, Martha confirmed, settling into a kitchen chair with the easy familiarity of a frequent visitor. He started talking about it after you sold your place, said it was criminal that you had to leave the land you loved to fund that pretentious coffee shop. Her impression of Clayton's gruff delivery was so accurate that it startled a laugh from me. I had no idea he felt that strongly about it. Clayton felt strongly about a lot of things he didn't express directly. Martha accepted the coffee I offered, but he believed in stewardship of land, animals, community. He saw that same quality in you, said you were the only Winters with sense enough to recognize what actually matters. The assessment warmed me, even as it highlighted how completely Clayton had seen through the family dynamics I'd tried to manage with private dignity. He had recognized the pattern of my relationship with Megan long before I'd been willing to acknowledge its imbalance. The children are coming for Christmas, I told Martha, changing the subject to more immediate matters. Megan and Brian too, though I'm not sure if they'll stay here or in town. Family's complicated, Martha observed, with the wisdom of someone who had navigated her own share of difficult relationships. But those grandchildren deserve to know their grandmother, and this place deserves children's laughter again. As evening settled over the ranch, I stood on the back porch, watching the last light fade from snow-dusted fields. The barn where Buttercup and Huckleberry now resided, the bunkhouse being transformed into classroom and office space, the east pasture where riders would eventually guide their mounts through therapeutic exercises. Clayton had been right. I needed something to build, something meaningful that extended beyond myself, yet reflected my values and abilities. Not just a place on the periphery of my daughter's life, but a purpose that would create ripples of positive impact long after I was gone. The Bennett Ranch, my ranch now, offered exactly that opportunity. Not a retreat from life's disappointments, but a platform for creating something valuable and lasting. Christmas would bring its own challenges, navigating the fragile new boundaries with Megan, balancing the children's excitement with their parents' discomfort, establishing holiday traditions that honored both past and present. But standing there in the Montana twilight, I felt prepared for whatever came next. No longer the woman who had slept in her truck after being turned away from her daughter's Thanksgiving table, but someone who had reclaimed her strength, her purpose, and her right to shape her remaining years with intention rather than accommodation. Clayton's final gift hadn't been just land and money. It had been permission to become fully myself again. As Lillian builds her therapeutic writing program and prepares for a challenging Christmas reunion with her family, she's discovering that Clayton's bequest was far more intentional than she realized. How will Megan and Brian react to the transformed ranch and Lillian's newfound purpose? And can this family begin healing the wounds inflicted on Thanksgiving night? Subscribe now for the final chapter in this powerful story of betrayal, redemption, and second chances. Christmas Eve transformed the ranch house with subtle magic. Pine garlands draped across the stone mantel, twinkling lights reflected in window glass, the scent of cinnamon and apples wafting from the kitchen where I'd spent the morning baking. Not elaborate decorations like those that had adorned Megan and Brian's Seattle home, but warm touches that made the space feel festive without pretension. Through the kitchen window, I watched the scene unfolding in the snowy paddock, Travis leading Buttercup in a circle while the twins took turns on her broad back, their excited voices carrying across the crisp air. Emma sat tall and confident, following Travis's instructions with serious concentration. Ethan, initially hesitant, now grinned with accomplishment as he balanced without clutching the saddle horn. They had arrived yesterday afternoon, tumbling from Megan's rental car with exuberant energy after the flight from Seattle, launching themselves into my arms with genuine excitement that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Children's love is wonderfully uncomplicated, freely given, untainted by adult calculation or conditional availability. Megan and Brian had followed more tentatively, carrying luggage and uncertainty in equal measure. After some discussion, they had decided to stay at the ranch rather than in town, accepting the guest rooms I'd prepared while maintaining a careful politeness that acknowledged our still fragile relationship. The children deserve a family Christmas, Megan had explained with uncharacteristic humility. And this place, it's amazing, Mom, what you're creating here. The first genuine compliment she'd offered since my return to Montana, delivered without reference to the inheritance that had made it possible or comparison to the lifestyle they'd been forced to downsize from in Seattle. Small progress, but significant. Martha's arrival broke my reflections, her truck pulling up with a box of homemade cookies and a small pine tree strapped in the bed. "Those grandkids need something to decorate," she announced, wrestling the tree onto the porch with surprising strength for her 73 years. "Found this growing too close to my fence line. Needed to come down anyway." The thoughtfulness of her gesture touched me deeply. I'd been so focused on preparing bedrooms and planning meals that I'd overlooked the children's potential desire for traditional Christmas activities like tree decorating. "You're a lifesaver," I told her, helping maneuver the tree into the living room. "I don't even know where Clayton kept decorations, if he had any." "Second shelf in the garage storage, behind the paint cans," Martha replied without hesitation. Man was organized to a fault, probably labeled and indexed his sock drawer. She wasn't wrong. I found the decorations exactly where she'd indicated, dusty boxes marked Christmas in Clayton's precise handwriting. Inside were vintage ornaments, glass balls in faded colors, hand-carved wooden figures, strands of lights that would need testing before use. Nothing matched or coordinated, but each piece carried history and character lacking in the color-themed designer trees that had graced Megan's home in previous years. By the time the twins returned from their riding lesson, pink-cheeked and bubbling with excitement, the tree stood ready in the living room corner awaiting their creative input. Their delight at the mismatched ornaments and simple white lights confirmed I'd made the right choice in using Clayton's decorations rather than purchasing new, coordinated collections. "Look, Mom," Emma called as she unwrapped a hand-painted ceramic star. "It's so old and special." The genuine appreciation for these humble decorations contrasted sharply with the children's previous Christmases, where everything had been picture-perfect but somehow less meaningful. Watching them debate the placement of each ornament with serious consideration, I caught Megan observing them with a complicated expression, wistfulness mixed with something like regret. "They're thriving here," she said quietly, joining me by the fireplace. "I've never seen Ethan so present. Normally, he'd be begging for screen time by now." "The outdoors has that effect," I replied. "Fresh air, animals, space to run. It's how you grew up, if you remember." She nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "I do remember. Dad teaching me to ride that awful pony with the attitude problem, building snow forts by the creek, feeling so free." The mention of Richard brought a moment of shared remembrance between us, the husband and father whose absence had altered both our lives in ways we'd never fully discussed. "Your father would have loved seeing the twins here," I said. "He always hoped they'd experience ranch life, even just as visitors." "I know." Megan's voice held regret tinged with defensiveness. Seattle offered opportunities I thought were more important. Good schools, culture, connections. But watching them today, different environments nurture different strengths, I offered, neither criticizing her choices nor absolving the priorities that had led to our Thanksgiving estrangement. They're fortunate to experience both worlds. The conversation might have deepened further, but Brian appeared from the guest room where he'd been taking work calls despite it being Christmas Eve. His expression suggested the calls hadn't brought positive news. "Dinner smells amazing," he said with forced enthusiasm that didn't reach his eyes. The strain of recent months showed in the new lines around his mouth, the slight slump of shoulders that had once carried designer suits with confident ease. The evening unfolded with surprising warmth, despite the underlying tensions. Travis joined us for dinner, bringing an easy conversational flow that bridged awkward silences. The twins dominated the table talk with breathless accounts of their riding adventures and plans to help with barn chores the following morning. After the meal, as we gathered in the living room with mugs of hot chocolate, Ethan suddenly asked the question that had likely been simmering beneath the surface of our careful interactions. "Grandma, are you still mad at Mom and Dad for Thanksgiving?" The directness of his inquiry created instant tension. Megan froze with her mug halfway to her lips. Brian studied the floor with sudden fascination. Even Emma, usually chattering continuously, fell silent, watching me with solemn eyes. The question demanded honesty, yet required delicacy. These children loved their parents despite the adults' flawed choices. My response would shape not just this Christmas gathering, but potentially their understanding of forgiveness and accountability. "I was hurt by what happened at Thanksgiving," I acknowledged, meeting Ethan's earnest gaze. Sometimes families make mistakes that cause pain, but being hurt doesn't mean staying angry forever. It means finding new ways to relate to each other with more understanding and respect. Is that why we're here for Christmas instead of you coming to our house? Emma asked, her perceptiveness belying her 7 years. Partly, I admitted, and partly because I have a new home to share with you now, a place where we can make different kinds of memories together. Megan's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she remained silent, allowing the conversation to unfold without defensive interruption. Another small but significant shift from her previous patterns. Later, after the twins had been tucked into bed with promises of Christmas magic and assurances that Santa could definitely find them in Montana, I found myself alone on the back porch with Megan. The night sky stretched above us, stars impossibly bright in the clear mountain air, nothing like the light-polluted Seattle skies she'd grown accustomed to. "I keep thinking about you sleeping in your truck on Thanksgiving," she said finally, voice barely audible above the soft creak of the porch swing where we sat. "Every time I look at you with the twins, every time you show such grace with us after what we did." "It wasn't just Thanksgiving," I said gently. "It was years of gradual distancing, of my value being measured primarily through what I could provide rather than who I am." She flinched, but didn't deny it. "I don't know when I became so transactional, so focused on appearances and connections and leveraging relationships, even with my own mother. We often absorb the values surrounding us," I observed. "Seattle has a particular cultural emphasis on success markers and social positioning. It's seductive, but you never succumb to that," she countered. "Even living among people with significant wealth at the ranch, you and Dad never chased status or used people as stepping stones. We made different choices," I acknowledged. "Neither better nor worse inherently, just aligned with different priorities." We sat in silence for several moments, the porch swing moving gently beneath us, echoes of similar nights when she'd been a teenager seeking guidance or comfort on this same ranch, though in a different house down the road. "The coffee shop is officially bankrupt," she said eventually. "All the money you gave us, gone, plus what we borrowed against the house. I'd suspected as much, but hadn't pressed for details. I'm sorry it didn't succeed. Truly." "Are you?" A hint of the old defensiveness crept into her voice. "Sometimes I wonder if you secretly enjoy seeing our failure after how we treated you." The accusation stung, but I recognized it as deflection rather than genuine belief. "Your struggles don't bring me joy, Megan. Neither does watching my grandchildren navigate their parents' financial stress and downsized expectations." She had the grace to look ashamed. "I'm sorry. That was unfair." "Yes, it was." I didn't soften the assessment with platitudes or excuses. Part of moving forward is taking responsibility for choices and their consequences, not looking for others to blame when those consequences arrive. Megan nodded slowly, accepting the gentle rebuke without the prickly defense that would have characterized her response months earlier. "Brian's been offered a position back in Montana, Great Falls, nothing like his Seattle salary, but stable. We're considering it." The information surprised me. That would be a significant change. "Everything's already changed," she said with unexpected insight. "The luxury home, the elite schools, the social circle we worked so hard to cultivate, it all evaporated the moment the coffee shop failed. The friends who attended our Thanksgiving dinner haven't returned our calls since the bankruptcy filing." I absorbed this without comment, neither celebrating her comeuppance nor rushing to soothe the ego bruises it had clearly inflicted. "The twins were happier today than I've seen them in months," she continued. "No pressure for achievement, no scheduled enrichment activities, just horses and snow and time with their grandmother." She turned to face me directly. "If we moved back to Montana, would there be space for us in your life? After everything?" The question carried layers of meaning beyond its surface simplicity. Was I willing to allow closer relationship without resentment? Could we establish new patterns, not based on financial dependence or obligation? Was genuine healing possible? "There will always be space for you and the children in my life," I said carefully. "But any relationship moving forward needs to be built on mutual respect, not convenience or necessity." She nodded, accepting the boundary as fair rather than punitive. "I'd like to try to rebuild something healthier between us, for the twins, but also for ourselves." Inside the house, the Christmas tree lights glowed through the window, illuminating the vintage ornaments the children had placed with such care. Tomorrow would bring present opening and holiday meals, perhaps sledding if the weather held. Ordinary family activities that felt extraordinary after the painful rupture of Thanksgiving night. No magic transformation had occurred. Megan and Brian still carried the consequences of their choices. Our relationship remained tender, requiring careful navigation of newly established boundaries. The path forward would undoubtedly include missteps and old patterns resurfacing alongside genuine efforts at change. But sitting there on Clayton's porch, my porch now, with Montana stars brilliant overhead and the promise of children's laughter filling the house come morning, I felt a quiet certainty that we had begun something important. Not erasing the past, but building a future with clearer vision and stronger foundations. Clayton had been right about so many things. About my need for purpose beyond being a convenient resource for my daughter's ambitions. About the healing potential of this land and the work I was creating here. About the value of standing firmly in one's own truth rather than contorting to meet others' expectations. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Megan said softly as we rose to go inside, the cold finally penetrating our conversation. "Merry Christmas, daughter," I replied, the familiar title carrying new meaning. No longer an identity that entitled her to unlimited accommodation, but a relationship we were both choosing to nurture with greater awareness and intention. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. The therapeutic writing program would continue developing towards spring launch. Decisions about Megan's potential return to Montana would unfold in their own time. But tonight, in this moment, I stood at the threshold of Clayton's house, my house, with my daughter beside me and my grandchildren sleeping peacefully inside. No longer the woman who had slept in her truck after being rejected from Thanksgiving dinner, but someone who had found unexpected strength in that painful moment. Someone who had discovered, in the winter of her life, that new beginnings were still possible, that boundaries could foster healing rather than rejection, that the truest forms of gratitude weren't found in elaborate dinners with strategic guest lists, but in the simple recognition of each person's inherent value, independent of what they might provide or contribute. A lesson worth the difficult journey it had taken to learn. Thank you for joining this journey of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate redemption. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, activate notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments below.
Trước khi khép lại câu chuyện này, mình muốn bạn ở lại với mình thêm một chút, như một cuộc trò chuyện thực sự, không vội vàng, không kịch bản. Đôi khi mình nghĩ, điều đặc biệt nhất của những câu chuyện như thế này không phải là cao trào, không phải là cái kết, mà là những cảm xúc còn đọng lại sau khi mọi thứ đã kết thúc. Bạn có bao giờ xem xong một câu chuyện rồi tự nhiên im lặng vài giây không? Không phải vì không có gì để nói, mà là vì có quá nhiều thứ đang chạy trong đầu. Mình thì có. Và mỗi lần như vậy mình lại tự hỏi, ngoài kia có bao nhiêu câu chuyện giống như thế này mà chúng ta chưa từng được nghe. Bao nhiêu con người đã trải qua những điều khó khăn như vậy nhưng không có ai kể lại. Bao nhiêu người phụ nữ đã phải mạnh mẽ trong im lặng mà không ai thực sự nhìn thấy. Đó là điều khiến mình luôn suy nghĩ rất nhiều sau mỗi video. Bởi vì sự mạnh mẽ không phải lúc nào cũng ồn ào. Nó không phải lúc nào cũng là những khoảnh khắc đứng trên sân khấu hay những chiến thắng rõ ràng để mọi người vỗ tay. Đôi khi sự mạnh mẽ chỉ đơn giản là thức dậy vào mỗi buổi sáng khi bạn không còn chút năng lượng nào, tiếp tục cố gắng khi mọi thứ dường như đang chống đối lại bạn. Mỉm cười dù bên trong bạn đang rất mệt mỏi. Và điều đặc biệt là rất nhiều người phụ nữ ngoài kia đang làm điều đó mỗi ngày. Không ai biết, không ai hỏi, nhưng họ vẫn tiếp tục. Những nhân vật trong câu chuyện bạn vừa xem có thể là hư cấu, nhưng cảm xúc của họ thì không hề hư cấu. Nỗi đau là sự thật, sự tổn thương là thật, và cả sự kiên cường cũng là thật. Đó là lý do tại sao mình luôn muốn kể những câu chuyện như thế này. Không phải để làm mọi thứ trở nên buồn hơn, mà để chúng ta có thể hiểu hơn, hiểu rằng đằng sau mỗi con người là cả một hành trình mà chúng ta không thể nhìn thấy. Hiểu rằng đôi khi sự im lặng của một người không phải là họ yếu đuối, mà là họ đã phải chịu đựng quá nhiều. Và hiểu rằng sự vươn lên không phải lúc nào cũng hoàn hảo. Có những lần họ sẽ gục ngã, có những lúc họ sẽ nghi ngờ chính mình, có những khoảnh khắc họ muốn từ bỏ tất cả. Nhưng rồi họ vẫn đứng dậy, không phải vì họ không sợ, mà là vì họ không còn lựa chọn nào khác ngoài việc phải tiếp tục. Và mình nghĩ đó mới là định nghĩa thực sự của sức mạnh. Không phải là không bao giờ yếu đuối, mà là vẫn bước tiếp ngay cả khi bạn đang yếu đuối nhất. Có thể khi nghe đến đây, bạn sẽ thấy câu chuyện này không chỉ là về một nhân vật nữa, mà là về rất nhiều con người. Có thể là một người bạn của bạn, một người thân trong gia đình, hoặc thậm chí là chính bạn. Và nếu bạn từng trải qua những cảm xúc tương tự thì mình muốn bạn biết một điều: bạn không hề đơn độc. Có thể câu chuyện của bạn chưa được kể, có thể không ai thực sự hiểu hết những gì bạn đã đi qua, nhưng điều đó không làm cho những gì bạn trải qua trở nên ít quan trọng hơn. Ngược lại, nó càng cho thấy bạn đã mạnh mẽ như thế nào để đi đến đây. Và đó cũng là lý do mình luôn hy vọng khi bạn xem được những video này, bạn không chỉ xem để giải trí, mà bạn sẽ cảm nhận, bạn sẽ dừng lại một chút để nghĩ, để nhìn mọi thứ chậm lại, để hiểu hơn về con người và về chính mình. Bởi vì đôi khi một câu chuyện có thể không thay đổi cả thế giới, nhưng nó có thể thay đổi cách bạn nhìn nhận về thế giới. Và như thế đã là rất đủ rồi. Nếu bạn đã đi cùng mình đến tận đây, thật sự mình rất trân trọng điều đó. Không phải ai cũng có đủ kiên nhẫn để lắng nghe đến tận giây phút cuối cùng. Và việc bạn vẫn ở đây có nghĩa là câu chuyện này đã chạm đến bạn, dù chỉ một chút. Nếu bạn muốn, bạn có thể tiếp tục đồng hành cùng mình trong những video tiếp theo. Vẫn sẽ là những câu chuyện như thế này. Những câu chuyện có thể sẽ khiến bạn suy nghĩ nhiều hơn, có thể khiến bạn cảm thấy nặng lòng, nhưng cũng có thể mang lại cho bạn một góc nhìn khác. Và trước khi kết thúc, mình chỉ muốn nói một điều thôi. Đôi khi cuộc sống sẽ không công bằng, đôi khi mọi thứ sẽ xảy ra theo cách mà bạn không thể kiểm soát. Nhưng điều bạn luôn có thể kiểm soát là việc bạn chọn đứng dậy như thế nào sau tất cả. Dù chậm cũng được, dù mệt cũng được, chỉ cần bạn vẫn bước tiếp thì bạn đã mạnh mẽ hơn bạn nghĩ rất nhiều rồi. Cảm ơn vì các bạn đã ở đây, đã lắng nghe và đã cùng mình đi qua những câu chuyện này. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn trong những câu chuyện tiếp theo. Bye!